This is the Spurs Cast with your host, Paul Garcia.
Welcome back to another episode of the Spurs Cast. On today's episode, I will be speaking with Project Spurs Director of Digital Content, Joe Garcia. In this episode, Joe and I will discuss the Spurs through 16 games, a Jakob Poeltl trade rumor, and Jeremy Sochan's start to his rookie season. Let's go to jump right into this episode with Joe. Joe, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Just trying to stay warm here in San Antonio because it is a little chilly and it's going to get colder. Just like the Spurs right now. They've been a little cold because they haven't won a game for a little bit. So hopefully that can turn around for us.
Yeah, the Spurs have been a bit chilly, like you mentioned there, Joe. They're in the midst of a 3-game losing streak. But let's go to jump right into this episode with Joe. So, Joe, let's talk about the last 4 games since I last recorded a Spurs Cast. The team is 1-3 in these last 4 games. Let's go back to last week. The Spurs were playing the Milwaukee Bucks in San Antonio. It was their final home game before they went on this West Coast road trip. They got an 18-point win, San Antonio, and they were favored by 2 points in this game. And one of the big reasons why is because the Bucks were missing 3 of their best players. They were missing Giannis Antetokounmpo, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton. So you expected the Spurs to win, and they did a good job, and they won there. Then the 3-game losing streak starts on the West Coast. So it begins earlier this week where they lose at Golden State by 37 points. Golden State was favored by 8.5. We do want to note that Trey Jones was out, and so this is a blowout for San Antonio, a blowout loss. Then the next night, on the second night of a back-to-back, the Spurs lost by 7 to Portland in Portland. The Blazers were favored by 8.5. This was a really competitive game for San Antonio. They really stuck in there, and it really went down to the wire until those final 5 minutes. The Spurs' youth showed, and they kind of collapsed there in crunch time, which is kind of what you expect from a young ball club. So they ended up losing by 7. Then the most recent game was on Thursday. The Spurs traveled to Sacramento. They lose by 18 points, but don't buy into that number because it was actually a competitive game for the first 3 quarters. The Spurs were in there through 3 quarters. Then in that final quarter, Sacramento started off with a 13-3 run, and they really ballooned that lead in San Antonio. Was basically out of the game. At that point, we do want to note, though, that Cauthen Johnson was out with injury, and so was Doug McDermott for that game against Sacramento. And so, this is the Spurs are starting to become that team that Vegas kind of projected at the beginning of the season. They were supposed to go 1-3 this week, according to Vegas, and they did go 1-3. Through 16 games now, Joe, they are 25th on offense. The Spurs, 30th dead last on defense. They have the 29th net rating in the league, and then they are 6-10 overall, 13th out west, and they are on the midst of a 3-game losing streak. So, what are your thoughts about this team this past week? How they've been performing?
Oh man, this past week it's been a little bit of growing pains, for not just the team, but I think Spurs fans in general. They were really high on the team, saying, hey, you better watch out. They might just play around with with the playing game, flirting with that playing game. But I knew things would kind of level off because just history tells us when you have a young team, you're going to have that inexperience. And I think that's what we've seen out of the last couple of games here for the San Antonio Spurs, especially in crunch time, as you have pointed out. 2-4 now in crunch time situations. The Portland game is in particular, I thought they played a beautiful game. They were very competitive through every single quarter. It wasn't like, hey, they were just blown out of the water. They had to dig themselves out of a huge hole. They were right there with the Portland Trailblazers from the defensive end, sticking with them. And I think it was really impressive watching one Jeremy Sochan have to guard one Damian Lillard, and he was able to hold his own, and he did a really good job out there. And you got to remind yourself, he's a 19-year-old rookie at that, being able to be defending some of the best players in the NBA. And they just got away from them in crunch time. They just were not able to close out the Blazers. And again, the inexperience reared its ugly head, and it is what it is. They let one slip away. Then you look to see what happened with the Kings again. We're starting to get, really behind the ball there early on. There was a 12-2 lead in the first quarter from the Kings. Spurs, they got right back into it by the end of the first quarter. Very competitive second quarter, very competitive again in the third quarter, and looking like, hey, they're going to take the lead, and they might actually, wind up getting a win out on the road in Sacramento. It was not to be. The fourth quarter came around, and the Kings just went on a run, and that's all she wrote. Coach Pop, I think, kind of waved the flag and said, all right, we're going to go ahead and start resting everybody and start giving some players some garbage minutes, and it is what it is. But I think the one thing that we can go ahead and focus on here, it's just the Spurs and their inexperience. I mean, I think Jakob Poeltl said it best, Paul, in one of the games that they lost. I think it was against the Kings when I was watching the post game, and he said it, and one of the other players said it in the post game against the Blazers. They're tired of losing. They know that they can win these close games. It's just, frustrating to them because they know that they're letting the game slip away from them because once again, inexperience rears its ugly head. So that is one thing they definitely need to correct. And you would hope that they would learn from their mistakes
Yeah.
and somewhere down the line here, they're going to go ahead and be more competitive in crunch time situations in that fourth quarter. And I think that's basically sums up what we've seen since the beginning of the season. They just can't close out games, effectively. So hopefully they can become a little bit more consistent, but that's kind of my observation.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of just like what you said. I mean, it was like that early record that they had to start the season. That kind of threw everybody off. It's like, oh wow, are the Spurs really not going to be this bad team that's going to end up with a bad record out west? And no, it's kind of becoming, like we said, what Vegas kind of thought. Actually, I was running the numbers as you were speaking a while ago, and they're still projected to win 31 games, which is still, it's not enough to be in a play-in game, but it's enough to pass that 22 wins by Vegas early on in the season. And just like you said, Joe, that crunch time that's going to happen with these young players. I mean, we just go back to that last game where they were in a crunch time situation where, Cauthen had 3 turnovers there in the final 4 minutes of the game. And then even this team, they really have to really battle hard for all 4 quarters. If they just have one bad quarter, they could really fall out of a game like we saw against Sacramento. And the way that I'm looking at this is I listen to Coach Pop's comments a lot, and he really hasn't been negative about this team. He's kind of been very positive, especially even like just last night in Sacramento. He says, they played really well. They tried their best. And it just, he kind of knows what the expectation is for this team. It's been very rare that he he has negative feedback for them. It's usually only on those nights where they have blowout losses where he's really saying anything bad about the team. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of like I said, what we expect. I'm still surprised that the defense isn't as good as the offense. I mean, that's fairly surprising. Teams are just shooting lights out against this team from all over the floor. And so that's something that I'm interested to watch. And also one thing to note too is I've talked to other writers about this from other sites. I had Bruno Passos and Josh Primo on the Spurs Cast recently, and we talked about how the Spurs are not they're not taking any chances with injuries. Anybody has like anything sore, they're going to rest those players, and so that's going to also lead to losses because like this next game on Saturday against the Clippers, they already have multiple players, rotation players that are on the probable or questionable list. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to note. All right, Joe, let's go to our second topic here. And this is a Jakob Poeltl trade rumor that came out earlier this week. I do want to give credit to hoopshype.com. That's where I got this rumor from. They listened to a podcast from Brian Windhorst of ESPN recently. And Windhorst, who's very plugged into the league, said on a podcast that Jakob Poeltl's name has come up in Boston trade rumors if the Celtics are seeking a defensive big. Windhorst also said that the Spurs may want to keep Poeltl. They couldn't come to an agreement on an extension with him before the season started. But if they don't trade him, then there's a chance maybe before free agency starts, they could extend him. And I think, Joe, you and I have talked about this, how I think they have the date to like June 30th to figure out an extension. So again, if they don't trade Jakob by February, there's a chance the Spurs can end up just signing him long-term this off season. Now, what would a potential deal look like for the Celtics and the Spurs? If that had to happen, we most likely need to wait until after December 15th, because that is when Danilo Gallinari, who has the biggest salary that the Celtics are probably willing to trade because he's out for the season on the injury list at $6.4 million. So he can't be traded because he signed as a free agent this offseason. So that's why we're saying December 15th. And if you really get Gallinari and any of the Celtics rotation, back end rotation players like maybe Peyton Pritchard or Blake Griffin or Luke Cornett, Noah Vonleh, or Justin Jackson, and you would have to guarantee their deals. Either one of those players plus Gallinari could make the salaries work to get Poeltl. And then Boston has a plethora of picks. I mean, they have a 24 first-round pick, 25, 26, 27, 29. And again, for the Spurs, they're like, hey, you're taking one of our top players here. So, how many picks are you giving up? And I think that's the question is, can the Spurs get 2 for him? Maybe, maybe the Celtics only want to give 1. And we know that these teams have, they've worked together because they just made that trade last year with Josh Richardson and Derek White and all those players last year. And then also something notable is Zach Lowe. He didn't mention that a specific team has interest in Poeltl, but he did mention that teams are calling about they're going to be calling this year about Doug McDermott and Jakob Poeltl. So we definitely know that Poeltl's name and McDermott will be in the trade rumors. What are your thoughts, Joe, on this trade rumor between the Celtics and Spurs?
Oh man, the trade rumors between just surrounding the San Antonio Spurs started in the offseason.
Yes.
Jakob Poeltl's names come up, Josh Richardson's names come up, and Doug McDermott, which we knew this was going to happen just, from us being analysts, just, seeing what's unfolding here, because they're the veterans, and the veterans are always valuable to a team, So teams don't necessarily want to overpay for veterans, but they know that the Spurs are looking to rebuild for their future. So they know that picks are very attractive to one San Antonio Spurs. And also knowing the position that the Spurs are in with these particular players and the expiring contracts, particularly with Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl, by him not buying in, and saying, "Hey, I'm going to go ahead and take a first deal that comes at me." I think that kind of says that he might be contemplating his future with the San Antonio Spurs, meaning he might want to go ahead and test the free agency waters, and the Spurs could actually lose him for nothing if they don't go right out and trade him. So you have that particular conundrum here that they have to contemplate. Do they go ahead and write it out and see if they can go ahead and offer him a comparable deal? Because the deal that he was offered prior to this was a hometown discount. I think right now he's showing that he's a little bit worth a little bit more than just the hometown discount. He's really shown an uptick in his offensive game, and his ability just to go out there and be a versatile center shows that other teams are taking notice of that as well. And then his 31-point outing that he had just a couple nights ago too really rose his stock. So I think the Spurs are going to listen, and if they find a deal that they cannot say no to, they're going to go ahead and pull the trigger. And unfortunately, if the San Antonio Spurs were to lose their starting center in one Jakob Poeltl, the team will really be in dire straits, because Jakob Poeltl, I believe, is the glue that really holds that starting unit together, because the little things, the intangibles that he does out there on the court. He's great at setting screens, setting picks. He can pass the ball. He's decent enough in the paint. He can go ahead and hold his own when it comes to trying to get a rebound, little tip ins here and there. And also, he's done a better job of recognizing the mismatches that he has in the situations where he can go ahead and overtake his defender. I noticed that in the Portland game, and I kind of noticed that again in the Sacramento games when they come off and they switch on him and he has an undersized player. He's taking advantage of those situations. So it shows his growth as a player. His IQ has increased. Doug McDermott, he's showing that he's great coming off that bench, and I'm sure that a lot of other teams will find that very valuable for their benches to bring that balance to their teams. He brings a lot of veteran experience. He moves well without the ball, can knock down a three. Isn't, let's say he doesn't excel on defense, but he's versatile enough to, maybe go ahead and stay with the defender. And then just, that veteran leadership again is something that a lot of these other teams are going to be really looking for. So it doesn't surprise me that their names are out there on the trading block right now, as far as being thrown out in rumor situations. You just know something's going to happen, Paul, before the trade deadline. And I think Spurs fans need to prepare themselves to say bye-bye to some of these veteran players. Unfortunately, it is the nature of the business.
Yeah, and especially with the trend that they're having right now, 3-game losing streak again, 6-10 overall, and 13th out the West. I mean, this is kind of, why are you going to have these players on the team if you're not going to, be a ball club, competing for the playoffs or the play-in tournament? And you made a great point there, Joe. The fact that Jakob is on the last year of his deal, which means that's kind of the give and take is in those negotiations between the Spurs and whoever they're going to trade him to. If they do trade him, it's because those teams can say, okay, we don't want to give up 2 first-round picks, maybe just 1, because he's on an expiring deal and he's an unrestricted free agent, meaning he can sign this offseason wherever he wants. So that's just something to watch. And like Joe said, I agree. I think these rumors will definitely heat up as the season goes along, as we get closer to February. And again, if the Spurs and Celtics do want to make a deal, the most likely scenario would be that Gallinari has to be included. And for that to happen, that would not be able to happen until after December 15th, so about a month from now. So again, that's just something to watch.
I also think that Gallinari, if that trade goes through, he'll never see the court here in San Antonio. He'll be waived immediately.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the second time. He's actually I think he's still on the payroll for the Spurs from the first league. Yeah, he is actually getting paid right now by San Antonio. So yeah. Anyway, I mean, yeah. So that's just something to watch again. And again, like we said, these rumors will continue to happen as the season goes along with the Spurs team, especially if they're continuing to struggle. All right, Joe. Now let's go to our next topic here. And this one, I am gonna project some stats because there's a lot here that I want to show to the audience that watches this visually. So let's do a deep dive now on Jeremy Sochan. Now that he's played in 15 games for his rookie start, and let's just go. Let's first start on the offensive end, and then we'll go to the defensive end. So he's now played in 15 games for the team. He's averaging 25 minutes. So he's definitely, the starter there at the 4. He's averaging 8 points, and these stats are rounded: 8 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. I don't know, either 1 steals in there and 1 turnover. he actually one thing that's interesting to me is that Coach Pop has been trusting him and putting him in crunch time situations. In all 6 crunch time games, Sochan has been a part of all 6 of those games. So Pop definitely wants him getting that experience of being in a close game, a tight game, even though the team is struggling. Now, as far as what he's doing in crunch time, he's 3 of 3 from the floor, all inside scoring. He has 0 assists and 1 turnover. Again, it's only 6 games. One thing I noticed was that you mentioned how Jakob Poeltl is the post-up player that they go to sometimes. Sochan's actually the second player who has the most post-ups on this team. He only has 10, which is a small sample size. But again, he's second. They're letting him run a little bit of post-ups. And when he does get the post-ups, he actually passes out. So he's definitely being a playmaker on offense for this team. Shooting-wise, I've been really impressed with just his efficiency near the rim. He does a really good job of rolling and getting those alley-oop attempts from his teammates. He's building good chemistry with them. When he does drive, he's making sure to take shots close to the rim. And so we see that here in the data where 41% of his shots come right near the rim, and he's scoring very efficiently. He's only missed 9 shots all year, 31 of 42. His outside shot and his jumper, we expected this. I mean, he was not a player who came in with the jumper. We knew that this is going to take time. So I didn't even really pay attention too much to the 3-point numbers. So again, we do know that he's struggling from the 3. He's 34% of his shots come from 3. He's not efficient at the 3-point shot. And of course, we know that defenses leave him wide open because that's his one area of weakness on offense. So 77% of his threes are attempted wide open, and he's only made 5 of 27. But again, I'm not paying too much attention to shooting in year 1 because again, that was kind of something we expected. We expect him to get better, maybe in the offseason or as the season progresses. These are just some stats I wanted to dig up, just looking at how does he compare to other forwards in the league who play his position, league wide. So here's some stats on offense. His assist to usage rate is in the 66th percentile amongst forward. That's pretty impressive. Better than league average. 83rd percentile amongst forwards in rim frequency. So his shot attempts at the rim, he's in the 83rd percentile compared to players at his position. He's in the 90th percentile, elite territory here among forwards in rim accuracy. So again, he's finishing very well, like I mentioned, compared to other players at his position. And then he's in the 64th percentile in offensive rebound percentage among forwards. What are your thoughts, Joe, on Jeremy Sochan's offense so far this year?
It is what it is at this point. Like I was telling Spurs fans, if they go back and they even look at the scouting report prior to the NBA draft occurring, that was one of his areas of weakness. However, when he played with Baylor, he was not known for his offensive prowess. There's aspects of his game that you truly love, which is one, his ability to move without the ball. We've seen him be able to move really well out there on the court without the ball, sneaking away from his defender, doing some cuts, and getting alley-oops. And as you said, his near the rim efficiency really speaks of a strength of his game. His outside shot really isn't much to be desired. His mid-range jumpers, his three-point attempts, from beyond the arc. He takes wide open threes. And again, defenses aren't really trusting him to make that shot, and they kind of slack off of him a little bit and dare him to shoot. And he's taken a lot of wide open threes, and they've been off the mark. And you can tell that he doesn't shoot it with confidence. And that's okay because he's just a rookie right now. He's 19 years old. It's not to say that he cannot develop that shot as he gets a little bit later on in his career. Everybody has something that they need to work on, and I'm sure he'll work on that in the offseason. But from what you're seeing from Jeremy Sochan in his rookie season, I mean, he is what he is, and in the paint, great. Outside of the paint, when he's shooting, you don't really trust him in those situations. And I think that's why he looks a little awkward out there when he gets past the ball and he's at the top of the key and he's looking to pass immediately. He's like, he doesn't even trust himself to take that shot, But if you get him in an ISO situation where he's driving to the rim, as we did see in this game, he can posterize some people. I mean, he can get up there and he can dunk the ball. And you got to admire that about Jeremy Sochan, is he is not afraid. He's got a lot of guts. He's got a lot of courage. And I think that's what Coach Pop really admires about this rookie. And I think Spurs fans tend to forget that we're talking about Sochan getting meaningful minutes in his rookie season. And not only at that, Paul, but starting. That speaks a lot of the trust factor there that, the coaching staff and one Coach Pop has in Jeremy Sochan. You love everything that you're seeing out of your rookie right now. And I think his high energy level out there on the defensive end, speaks volumes about him. I mean, the kid is a hard worker, man, and you just love his energy out there on the court. So look forward to seeing more and more out of Jeremy Sochan this season. But Spurs fans need to be a little patient with him. His offensive game can develop. It's just not there yet. And you know, it wasn't there in college. So that's not something that comes natural to him. So little patience there.
Yeah, you brought up a good point, and it's the fact that he's not taking bad shots in terms of like if we just look here, I was just doing the math here. 27 of his threes have been wide open, and that means he's taken 35 total. So he's only taken 8 that are not wide open. So again, he's not forcing them. These are threes that are totally wide open. It's probably at the end of a shot clock when that's all but he has to shoot it. He's right there. And another good sign there is that his pull up threes, because that's how you can tell he's not forcing it. If he was taking way more pull-up threes and still missing them all, he's only taking one. So again, it's definitely when he does have to take 3. I know he's not making them very well, but again, he's at least taking those only wide open ones. It's not like he's forcing those kind of shots, and wasting a possession. So yeah, so that's on offense. And again, like you said, Joe, that's just that wasn't an area of his game that from college that he came in with that was going to be a strength for him. Now let's look at his defense. So his defense, some of his defense numbers, again, these are stats that are rounded. He has 3 fouls per game, 1 steal and 1 block when you round them per 36 minutes. He averages 2.3 deflections, 8.5 contested shots, and 4.4 rebounds. And then as far as compared to other forwards in the league, according to Cleaning the Glass, he's in the 64th percentile in block percentage amongst forwards. What are your thoughts on his defense so far this year?
Again, I just said, I like that part of his game. I think that's really why the San Antonio Spurs selected him. To come to the team and really help them make that leap on defense, because we've seen that the team has played a little bit better defensive wise, from the eye test. Now the stats might tell you something different, but when you're looking at it from the eye test, and a lot of Spurs fans have told me this on social media, hey, the Spurs, despite what, the stats are telling you, the eye test shows that they're a little bit more active out there on the court. And I got to agree with some of these fans, they know what they're talking about. When you're looking at the game and you're just enjoying it from a fan perspective, the team is a little bit more active because they're younger. They're able to keep up with a lot of these teams out there from the defensive end. The only problem is that they still let these teams take a lot of uncontested threes, they get in trouble when it comes to transition defense. And I've seen that out of this, young team as well. Jeremy Sochan too. He's not a stranger to that as well. He still gets caught up sometimes with the mismatch coming back, trying to get back in transition to the transition defense and trying to catch up with his defenders. Sometimes they get a little, I guess complacent there, and they might be a second or 2 late rotating to their defenders. So again, they take shots wide open. Sometimes they're able to get past the Spurs defense and including Jeremy Sochan with just a simple pick or a screen. It happens. I mean, these are things that rookies are going to have to get used to, playing in these types of, elite levels when it comes to really good teams out there on the court, and having to go ahead and counteract those defensive schemes. From what you're seeing, though, the mechanics out of Jeremy Sochan are the things that you really like to see. High energy player, moves really well out there on the court, very active all the time. Doesn't make a lot of mistakes out there, but he does make some. In particular, you're seeing some of these games that he has a high amount of fouls, and that's just something he's going to have to learn, that, as the game comes to him, those are things that he's just going to have to get better with. And I think he understands it too, because you can see when he gets frustrated, when he makes these, little ticky-tacky fouls that, oh man, he defended quite well, but at the end you just get a little too close, or you get a little handsy, and it's just a stupid little foul, brush of the hand or a brush of the elbow or the forearm, and there you go, you're sending your defender to the line, and you played a beautiful game against him as far as the defense goes. And I think those are just little things that Jeremy Sochan is going to have to work through. But one of the things that I do commend him for is he doesn't really buy into the ball fakes a lot. I've seen a lot of these guys out there, especially these veterans, they try to get him to bite with that ball fake, and he doesn't fall for it. He stays right with them. He makes them play an honest game, but they still get him, when they're being aggressive or they're trying to go ahead and pull back, with the pull-up jumper, and he still gets him on the elbow or the hand or the forearm, like I was saying. And he's just got to get better when he's controlling that, when he's defending. But the mechanics for Jeremy Sochan, he's looking like he's going to be one of the better defenders that the San Antonio Spurs have right now in their arsenal. So look forward to seeing how he blossoms as the season wanes on.
Yeah, and like just one thing I was sort of mention is just like, and it's a thing like you mentioned, Joe, that stats don't really measure. It's like it's just his versatility. We saw against the Warriors. I know that it was a tough night for him, but Pop put him on Steph Curry. I mean, that's the thing. Like he's putting him on point guards at times, and again, Pop's giving him that like what I guess what you would call like an education, like letting him learn how to play against some of these elite players. And that's good for being 19 years old and getting that experience of guarding one of the best players in the league. In Stephen Curry, and so getting that kind of experience, and then we see him how he can play different positions, how he's very flexible. Like you mentioned, Joe, he covers a lot of area on the floor on the defensive end. If they want to run like zones, they can use him in different ways. If they want to run like half court or full court traps, they can use him because he's so flexible and versatile out there as a defender. So yeah, I think that that's just something to watch too. And it's really good though, even though the team may not be successful. Him as a rookie, he's actually getting a really good learning experience out there on the court. So that's Sochan, and again, it's a good thing that again we're seeing him get real minutes in these games, and he's also started there for San Antonio. Okay, so now for our next topic, we do want to provide an update on the Dr. Hillary Cauthen, San Antonio Spurs, and Josh Primo legal dispute update. So there was an update on Thursday. On Thursday, Tony Busby, the attorney for Dr. Cauthen, he confirmed to the San Antonio Express News that there has been a settlement reached with the San Antonio Spurs. Dr. Cauthen, according to the records of the Bexar County, I guess office, the courthouse basically. Dr. Cauthen did drop the suit against the Spurs only, so we do want to know the suit was only dropped against the Spurs, so not against Josh Primo, according to what was written there, and with prejudice. And this means that she can't refile the lawsuit like in the future against the Spurs, at least the Spurs only. And so this is per the reporting of Tom Osborne of the San Antonio Express News. And then also on Thursday, R.C. Buford, of the Spurs Sports and Entertainment CEO, he issued this statement. I'll go ahead and read it now. The situation regarding Josh Primo is a matter we take seriously. Since learning of the allegations, we have taken and are taking measures to ensure that all parties involved are treated with dignity and respect. We know we owe that to Dr. Cauthen, our players, our staff, and our community. As an organization, we are continuously evaluating and refining our processes so they ultimately reflect the values and culture of who we aspire to be every day. To that end, we have decided to collaborate with Dr. Cauthen and other experts in an effort to review and improve our workplace processes and procedures. This is a learning opportunity for us and one that we are certain will make us better moving forward. So that is an update right now on what is going on with the legal dispute between Dr. Cauthen, the Spurs, and Josh Primo. And like we said, it's with the Spurs and Dr. Cauthen, they're not going to start collaborating, and they have reached a settlement here. All right, so thanks to Joe for joining me on this episode of the Spurs Cast. I also want to thank you to Joe for mixing and producing this episode. From all of us at Project Spurs, stay safe and have a great day.
See ya.